Hey guys, it's me Reno from Snailworks Crochet, and in today's video I will be reviewing my newest box of the Hooks and Needles subscription box. So for those of you who missed my previous two videos of my Hooks and Needles review, my plan was to subscribe to the Hooks and Needles subscription box for 3 months. I did one for October, November, and I actually skipped December, but I have my third box now for January that just arrived today. So let's break it open and see what we got. Because for those of you who did miss my previous reviews of the Hooks and Needles box, I was planning on subscribing for 3 months to kind of figure out what I liked, didn't like, whatever. And then the video after this video will be a consolidated review of my experience and what I thought overall. I have reviewed the individual boxes. I reviewed, my first box, my second box, which was a pretty negative review. This is why we're doing this for 3 months, right? Not everything that comes in a subscription box is something you absolutely love. So let's see. Now, we got our weird booklet. This came in the last box. Ooh, okay, so this month, they have provided cute little handmade tags and a 3.5 millimeter hook. It's funny that they include this because my actual complaint about the box was the hook that they provided. So maybe this will redeem it. And they provided 3 little balls of the same yarn this time. This is a 2/8 yarn. It is Merino Wildflower, 70% wool, 30% polyamide. Nice, nice. And that's all that's in this box for this month. But let's look through the booklet to see what we got. I will say, I feel like these booklets are improving a little bit. This first part introduces 5 different types of crochet stitches. Interesting, but let's look over the projects. So the first beginner one is the Sunny Day Bucket Hat. I do find it a little weird that they have this bucket hat, but the picture of the yarn here versus the yarn I got is different. Let's see. Also, it's a bucket hat made with 2/8 yarn. I don't like making a bucket hat. I'm not hating the pattern, I just don't like making bucket hats. So, let's see what other ones they have. The Elegant Twilight Shawl. I think I might make this one. I like shawls. That is intermediate pattern. Let's look at the advanced pattern. And then this one is the Urban Drawstring Bag. And this one has a pretty unique textured stitch to this. It looks like this bag has like a bunch of post stitches, which, I don't know, I'm a little bit jazzed about it. So I think the 2 patterns I will make this month are the shawl and the drawstring bag. I am not making a bucket hat because I don't like making bucket hats. When it comes to these little skeins of yarn, I'm actually going to take full advantage of this very fancy yarn bowl that I bought a long time ago. And by a long time ago, I mean a couple months ago. It's from Kata Ceramics, and her short form content is what got me into her, and I just thought it was super cute. I will say, just looking at the patterns this time, I actually think I might have a more positive reaction towards it than my last box where I absolutely hated the patterns and the yarn. It was mainly the yarn I hated, so just putting that out there. I'm gonna start with the shawl because I'm more likely to like the shawl. I just know I will. It's a repeat, so I'm just gonna do magic ring because I'm a magic ring girly. It looks like this pattern has a decent amount of setup rows, and then once you do like a gajillion setup rows, you will then have a pattern repeat. I kind of like this pattern, and I'm liking this pattern so far because I actually like this kind of crochet. I personally prefer to use a smaller hook. I think it just looks prettier, and because of my natural crochet grip, which is the pencil grip, I think that is lending myself better to thinner yarns anyway. This is a pretty interesting way of doing the shawl granny bandana solid. I don't even know what it's called, but this is an interesting way of doing it because normally, and this is how I do it and how most other people do it, they have, you start off with a magic ring or whatever, and then you do 2 stitches in that first double crochet and then keep going. But this one has you do 3 in that first one, and I think that's a little bit interesting. Not sure why, but whatever. And I'm looking further into this booklet too, and it seems to have a lot of front post double crochets as well. So I don't know. I like this a lot, but I can see somebody hating it. And also, this hook, peak. This hook is so much better than the cheapo hook that they provide you in your first box. Now, I kind of wish all of the Hooks and Needles hooks were like this, but it is what it is, I guess. The only downside I'd say is that the yarn isn't very soft, but I think it's more so the fact that it's more of a wool than anything else. So I'm going to work on this a little bit more off camera, and I'll get back to you. It's been a while since I've updated you guys on my progress for my Hooks and Needles make, but it's going. I think I'm about halfway done with this shawl, and I'm about this far on here. It's gonna take me a while, honestly. But as I was thinking through just the rest of this box, I think depending on how long the shawl ends up being when I finish the pattern, I might just make the shawl and call it a day. The other 2 patterns in the booklet were not sparking joy for me personally. So I think with that, I will, after I finish this shawl, I'll just make that my video. But overall, I really like the hook that it comes with. I don't know exactly what type of hook it is, but it is a million times better than the size 5mm hook that they initially provide you. So there's that. The pattern is okay. Not really a lot more else to say for that, but I think overall, I definitely like this box so much more than the previous box. The yarn is better, it's not as splitty. The hook they provide is a lot better than the standard Hooks and Needles hook. I am a little bit disappointing that there's less little knickknacks in there. Even though I don't use the knickknacks, it was still nice to see. But yeah, they just didn't provide extra stuff this time. Well, minus the hook. But overall, at least this pattern I don't hate. I didn't try the other patterns, but they look fairly inoffensive. They're not exactly my style, but they look fine. The only call out I have actually is that the yarn I am given and the yarn they have in these photos are very different, and I don't know how I feel about that, because on one hand, I like that they gave me a more plain colored yarn for these patterns, because I think that this shawl, for example, has a bunch of post stitches on here, and I do find that post stitches stand out more when you use plain colored yarn. But when it comes to the readability of some of the photos that they have in here, it's not very good. All of the photos where they have like, you know, the how-to guides, the stitch pattern and the stitch definition get lost in the usage of variegated yarn that they have in the photos. So I'm not a fan of that. Overall, I think I just picked a pattern that I like a lot more than whatever I did last time. This box is a lot better. I have a feeling that, you know, if you are a thin yarn hater, you would absolutely hate this box because the hook is tiny and the thread is tiny. But I'm actually a fingering weight yarn lover, so I don't have that hang up that a lot of other folks do. Those are my thoughts. Okay, so I finally finished the shawl and it is not very shawl. The pattern says to do like a scalloped edging along this side, but I just chose not to do that. One, because I thought it looked kind of dumb, but also it's a mixture of I thought it looked dumb and I also didn't want to keep working on it. This is just my personal issue with shawls, is that they're very pretty, but there comes a point in every shawl that I've made where I just want to be over it. So I am now over it. That being said, I think just due to my tension, this shawl is not shawl. This is more like a neckerchief type of thing. So when you do it like this, it looks quite nice. But if I were to say this is what I was given and this is what I made, it doesn't really match up. That being said, this might just be my own personal tension. I mean, I counted the rows on this and this seemed to be a lot bigger, right, than what I made. So I think that's an individual tension thing. Now, one thing I noticed that I completely missed in some of the earlier clips that I filmed is that this specific pattern calls for 3 skeins of the hooks and needles yarn. So unlike the previous boxes where each pattern calls for 2 skeins, this pattern calls for 3 skeins. So if you were to make this pattern, you could not make anything else in the box. So I couldn't have made a hat or bag even if I wanted to. And you know what? That's okay. I dragged my feet on this box. I also noticed in this booklet, it specifically says, please note that the yarn color shown in the instructional photos may vary from the color included in your box. I mean, for me, that's kind of a given, but you know, it's good that they have that disclaimer here in the booklet. Another thing that they say in this booklet for the shawl in particular is that customize the size of your shawl by repeating the pattern until you reach your desired dimensions. I obviously could have done another pattern repeat. I just chose not to because I frankly didn't want to. I also wanted to strictly follow the pattern that is written in this booklet as well, though I kind of didn't do that by not adding the last scalloped edging, but you know, ignore that. I mean, overall, it's cute. I don't hate it. I'm not a shawl or neckerchief person. I like this pattern a lot more than the previous box's patterns, and I like the hook that was given compared to the previous month where you just used the size 5 hook. The yarn in particular is not my favorite, but that's just because it's not a superwash wool, it's just wool. So it's a little bit itchier than the previous yarns, which were a lot softer and squishier, so not a fan of that. Another thing I noticed on the round where they describe the finishing round, they say, find the beginning of each round marked in red on the photo. So that means that, you know, on their photo, it's supposed to have something marked in red. The photo does not have that thing marked in red, and I couldn't find it on the digital version either. So they might need some proofreading. Things tend to slip through the cracks, even with proofreaders and editors. But you might want to look out for that. Overall, I like this box a lot more than the previous box. I think it's fine. The pattern is the pattern. It is a pretty interesting shawl pattern, but I do think if I were to make this again, I'd probably use a thicker yarn like a DK or worsted weight yarn for this, just because it's a bit much for the fingering weight yarn. In my opinion, it's a little bit odd. And I think in general, a lot of the patterns in here were odd choices for fingering weight yarns. Like, one of them is a bucket hat. That's a lot of bucket hat to make with fingering weight yarn. I don't know, that seemed a little odd to me. I will conclude my video here for this box, and my next video coming out next week, I will be sharing my overall thoughts on the Hooks and Needles experience. So stay tuned for that, and with that, I will see you next time.